Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. So just a few more from Sky News. I think we're into week 7 to 8 now of the Israel-Hamas war. This week has been a ceasefire or pause or humanitarian pause, whatever words that they want to use to describe a cessation of violence from either side whilst hostages are given back to Israel that were taken on the massacre of October the 7th, and aid in the form of trucks from lots of charity organisations and countries coming in to help those that have been displaced. So it all seems that we're on the fourth. I think it's the fourth day today, and so far, it's all worked well. People, I'm amazed. I don't think I was really confident that I would see these hostages come back. I guess you always worry about that because of, past events and how things are, and the very fact that if they were in Gaza when it's being bombed, even if they are underground because they're using these Buster Bunker type bombs, I'm surprised there's so many of them alive. I just hope, it would be great if all 240, whatever the actual number is, actually all come back. I feel sorry though for the relatives, the loved ones who day to day are waiting, hoping that it all passes nicely and 30 come back, but it's not your person, and then the next day it's still not your person, and then maybe after 4 days they do say that they will keep the truce, whilst they drip feed these people out. But just the horror of when it may not, everyone may not get out in this, and then the fighting will start again, and that puts everyone in danger. I mean, maybe they were never in Gaza, maybe they were in Egypt all this time, or some part which is really, really safe. I don't know, or because they say the different organisations, Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, something like that, may have some of them. So it depends which ones have, whether they've looked after them properly like they're meant to do. Obviously, well, they're not meant to steal hostages, but anyone that you take, you're meant to, under international law and also under Sharia Islamic law, you have to look after people. But it's just so horrible, isn't it, when you think of the horrors that these people have gone through. But maybe it will give, I don't know, there's no benefit to this, but it will give those people that have gone through this and the families what it's like, because it always struck me when they would say, look, oh, now they're in Gaza and it's all dangerous and this, that and the other. But if, say, they weren't in Gaza and, Netanyahu was dropping bombs all over the place, I doubt they would have that kind of feeling or thought. But when you put yourself amongst the danger and then you see it from other people's eyes, that what it's like to live in a place where there's a siege, your loved one also had to go through maybe not having electricity, food, water and all these kinds of things, like the people that live there and have gone through that for a long time. Your liberty taken away. But I'm not trying to justify or say anything, just saying that they may have that feeling now because they've gone through a kind of suffering that maybe they hadn't gone through before. But of course a lot of these may be children of Holocaust survivors. I don't know if there are any Holocaust survivors amongst them. I don't know if they would still be alive at this age, but maybe if they were children in the 40s, it's possible, I guess. That would be just about possible. I don't know what they said. The oldest one was 80, so 40, 60. Yeah, it would be possible that there could be Holocaust survivors amongst those that were kidnapped. They would obviously understand what it's like to be taken. It's just so horrible, isn't it? That what gets me, irrespective, you take away all the labels and tags that we've given each other, this is human beings doing this, in a time where, the things we forget, because we're brought into the system, we're brought into, as children we know nothing, and we're taught patriotism, we're taught this circle around here, this is yours, and these are the people you should like, and these are the people you shouldn't like. A lot of this isn't voluntary, isn't like you have a choice. These things are put upon people. That's why you get different views that are similar to those people that live in certain areas. You know, that's why if you go to Iran, you'll see that there's a lot of negative attitude towards America. When you go to America, you'll see there's a lot of attitude negative to, say, China. When you go to the UK, maybe it's France or Spain or wherever, or, you know, well, not those, they're European countries they do like, but historically there has been that, or, you know, the English and the Scots, they used to fight for a long time, but it's a different kind of level. But what I mean is there's these things that, you know, that are attached to us that have got nothing to do with us, because when we were born babies, we were free of all this stuff. And these were man-made constructs that we're brought into and taught, and then we start adopting them, and then we start teaching the same, that this, like a circle of hate, as it were, of these ways to see and differentiate between what is actually exactly the same human beings. So anyway, I'm going to play these clips just because I thought they were quite interesting, and just to document, you know, the hostages are being set free. And the last one's actually the British, the doctor kept saying we haven't heard for a long time. The British Palestinian doctor who's talking about, I think I didn't hear all of it, but I think he's suggesting that he treated children that may have been affected by white phosphorus, which is not allowed. But well, it's not allowed by the West, but I don't believe Israel has signed up to that. But they say it's not that, but I mean, who knows? But it doesn't really matter anyway. The fact is that even if you take away that, the children and the innocent people that have died in this, and this is why, you know, a vast majority of people don't like war, because war, you know, whatever justification or reason it's been given, leads at the end of the day to a lot of deaths, not just of those people that may, you say, are guilty of crimes, or combatants, you know, soldiers who wear a uniform and know that they're going to put their lives on risk, but innocent people, children and women and men who, you know, don't want a place in war and this kind of hostilities. Anyway, let's play these clips. And there you go.
By this time, I was hoping to be able to share with you perhaps some images of children that had been released, having been held more than 6 weeks by Hamas following the atrocities of the 7th of October. That's not happened. Why? Elon Levy is joining us now, senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister. Hi, what's happened?
This is really heartbreaking. You know, Hamas could release the hostages now. It could have released them yesterday. It could have released them on October 7th. And every moment that it chooses not to release those vulnerable little children is a moment that it continues to psychologically terrorize these children's families. You know, we're hoping that at least tomorrow we can start to bring to an end the nightmare of some of the most vulnerable hostages, the over 30 children Hamas has been holding incommunicado. They've been holding them in the dark, and they've been keeping their families in the dark. Their families know nothing about their condition, physically, mentally, emotionally. You know, maybe even worse, these children don't know what has happened to their families, what happened to them on October 7th. This is little Abigail. She's 3. She was orphaned. Does this little girl who's been held in a tunnel for 50 days know she's an orphan? What does it mean for a 3-year-old girl to know that she's an orphan? This hostage crisis is intensely personal for everyone in Israel. We're a small country. Everyone knows someone who has had someone stolen from them. And we're hoping to begin bringing back our stolen children, bring back those hostages. And we're committed to the pledge that we will bring all of them back, and there will be no one left behind.
What caused the delay?
It appears that Hamas is determined to psychologically terrorize us. Hamas could have released these hostages long ago. It didn't have to take them hostage in the first place. You know, these children have
the most horrific circumstances. What caused the delay? Why are we not seeing them today? What's caused the delay?
At the moment, the talks are ongoing, and this is a very sensitive situation, so I have to be careful what I say. And I hope that we can begin to release the first batch tomorrow and get them out of the Hamas-held dungeons that they've been held in.
Suggestion is that Hamas didn't sign the paperwork. Is it as simple as that?
Look, this is a terrorist organization. It's not exactly an organization whose word is a law or writ, and we need its signature on paper. But again, Hamas can decide whenever it wants to release all 240 of those hostages, the children and the elderly, the men and the women, the soldiers and the civilians. It is for Hamas to decide it can release them, and we will continue putting military pressure on Hamas so that it releases all of our hostages, and we bring all of them home and leave no one left behind.
Why are you confident that the hostages, the children, will be released by tomorrow morning?
We are hopeful. We are continuing to apply military pressure on Hamas to release all of our hostages. It hasn't suddenly developed a conscience. It hasn't suddenly developed a sense of morality. The terrorists who burned, butchered, and beheaded people on October 7th haven't suddenly realized it's evil to hold a 2-year-old
So
girl
you're hopeful but not
hostage in a tunnel.
confident?
We are hopeful.
Okay, but not confident at this stage. You say that you want...
There's a lot of negativity, I feel, here, no? Sort of unnecessary attacking from Kay Burley. I don't know if it's just to try and, because she wants to get the exact answers to what she's asking, but it doesn't seem to be too much sensitivity. It seems very harsh, I would say, considering
confident at this stage. You say that you're hopeful that all of the hostages will be released eventually by Hamas. What happens then in Gaza?
We will continue with our campaign to destroy Hamas in response to the October 7th massacre. This is the terror group that on October 7th abducted little children from their beds, and if we leave them in power, it will do it again, because Hamas has told us it wants to perpetrate another and another and another October 7th massacre, and this war has to end with the end of Hamas. Because if we leave it free, we will leave it emboldened, and we will be in this same story in 6 months' time when Hamas attacks us again.
Okay.
So we're fighting to bring back our stolen children and to make sure that the terrorists of October 7th can never steal them again.
Mr. Levy, you say that once the hostages are all released, you are basically going to pound Hamas into to obliterate them. So what is their incentive to release all the hostages?
At the moment, Hamas is coming under unrelenting military pressure, and we've had it begging for a breather because it's getting clobbered. After the first 50 hostages are released, Hamas will have a decision to make. For every 10 additional hostages it releases, we are willing to agree to another one-day pause in the fighting. And if Hamas wants that time for another breather, they can release those hostages, and we'll continue putting pressure on Hamas until we get everyone home. We are committed. That is our obligation as a state. It goes the deepest values of the Jewish people, releasing people from captivity. We're determined to bring them all home. We won't leave any of them behind.
I was speaking to a hostage negotiator this morning. He made the comparison between the 50 hostages that Hamas has promised to release, as opposed to the 150 prisoners that are Palestinians that Israel has said that it will release. And he made the comparison between the numbers and the fact that does Israel not think that Palestinian lives are valued as highly as Israeli lives?
That is an astonishing accusation. If we could release one prisoner for every one hostage, we would obviously do that. We're operating in horrific circumstances. We're not choosing to release these prisoners who have blood on their hands. We are talking about people who have been convicted of stabbing and shooting attacks. Notice the question of proportionality doesn't interest Palestinian supporters when they are able to get more of their prisoners out. But really, it is outrageous to suggest that the fact that we are willing to release prisoners who are convicted of terrorism offenses, more of them than we are getting our own innocent children back, somehow suggests that we don't care about Palestinian lives. Really, that's a disgusting accusation.
Will President Netanyahu's political career survive this war?
The Prime Minister has been very clear. People are right to ask very difficult questions. And when this war is over, everyone is going to have to give the Israeli public answers. Everyone will be held accountable. Everyone is going to have to take responsibility. And after this war is over, after we win, after we destroy Hamas, we can open everything up. And he will give the Israeli people those answers, and we will interrogate and understand exactly how this happened and how we can make sure this never happens again.
Okay, I'm not sure if I said President Netanyahu then. If I did, my apologies.
Prime Minister.
He is the Prime Minister, of course, at the moment. For how much longer, we don't know at this stage. What about aid? What are we going to do about aid? We're talking to the International Red Cross in just a few moments' time. We need to get aid into Gaza.
Absolutely. It's very important that humanitarian aid reach the people of Gaza who need it, and to make sure that Hamas can't steal it. Our position has been very consistent from the beginning. We want as much food, water, medicine, and shelter going to the people of Gaza in a way that makes sure Hamas can't exploit those trucks in order to rearm and refuel. We've more than doubled our capabilities to inspect those trucks to make sure Hamas isn't exploiting them to smuggle in weapons. We know there have been logistical constraints on the part of the international agencies in Gaza that are supposed to receive that aid. But our position from the very beginning is we want to see that aid reach the people of Gaza, as much of it as possible, and we're ready to inspect that aid and facilitate that.
Okay, we must leave it there. I hope that we might be able to speak again tomorrow with better news for those little ones that have been held, as you said,
pray. Thank you, Kate.
For 50 days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back home, one of the stories that...
I'm going to see if I find that. The bit that she talked about, I didn't see that, the Red Cross. But yeah, she seemed to be very negative. I mean, I know, like, you know, the war aspect of what Israel done to Gaza has been bad, I get that, but these are talking about now hostages that, you know, I don't know, she seemed very abrasive and not very understanding of the situation.
Sky News. About this time, we were expecting to talk about children being released by Hamas. That has not happened in time. We're also hearing about 200 people, according to the Palestinian authorities, have died overnight in Gaza. Let's get a Palestinian perspective on the situation. Mustafa Barghouti is with us now. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme this morning. Your thoughts on the good morning. Your thoughts on the situation overnight. I know that you're speaking to us from Ramallah on the occupied West Bank.
I think it's very important to fix the terminology first. The 200 people who died in Gaza did not just die, they were killed by Israeli bombardment. And we just received the news that the Israeli army have arrested the director of the Shifa hospital, as well as many of the medical doctors there, and are interrogating them. The unfortunate thing is that the Israeli attacks on Gaza continue. So far, we have 14,732 people killed, including no less than 6,000 children and 4,000 women. The tragedy is that there are about 7,000 people missing, mostly under the rubble, and half of them probably are Palestinian children, which would bring the total number of Palestinian children killed to almost 9,000. That is, of course, unacceptable and unprecedented. There has been a ceasefire deal, which should be initiated. I think the Israelis have delayed it so far, but it has to go into effect very soon, and it would include complete ceasefire for 4 days, during which time 50 Israeli children and women will be returned home safely, in exchange for releasing 150 Palestinian children and women who are in Israeli jails. And this could be beginning of series of ceasefires, which I think is very much needed. I think continuing this war is absolutely unacceptable and represents a very terrible war crime, because it means just genocide. This war has to stop, and a ceasefire has to be established, during which time I think all prisoners could be exchanged and everybody can go home safely. And maybe, hopefully, the world community will put its efforts in initiating a true peace process to end this terrible situation and end the Israeli occupation, which has been the cause of all problems.
So much to unpick there. Where should we start? The fact that I'm sure Israel would say so many people are dying in Gaza because Hamas chooses to hide themselves away, a terrorist organisation, according to the British government and others, chooses to hide itself away in areas that are highly populated.
This is another lie by Israel, which is unfortunately adopted by most newsrooms in Europe, and I feel very, very sorry about that, because I think your newsrooms should be more objective and should verify information before broadcasting them. But anyhow, this is not true, because what we've seen.
Mustafa, which bit are you unhappy about? Because we have seen the tunnel.
What you just told me that Hamas. What you just said. What you just said. You repeated lies after lies after lies. One lie was that Palestinians decapitated heads of children.
I didn't say
CNN, No, I'm not saying
that.
you. I'm saying in general. I'm saying
you
in
just
general.
said lies
The
that
CNN,
I repeated.
the CNN. I didn't say you said that. I said newsrooms in general repeated many Israeli lies, including now the lie that Hamas is hiding among civilians. What we've seen yesterday on several broadcasts by different stations that Hamas fighters are attacking the tanks. They're not hiding among the civilian population. And to keep repeating that claim to justify the killing of 9,000 Palestinian children is unacceptable. I don't accept the fact that 32 Israeli children were killed on the 7th of October. No civilian should be killed. But to say that it is non-acceptable to kill 32 Israeli children, but it is acceptable to kill 9,000 Palestinian children, and to claim that Palestinians are responsible for killing themselves is totally out of line. There were many lies told, including about hospitals. The other day, the Prime Minister of Israel, ex-Prime Minister Ehud Barak, said he was responsible, his government was responsible for building basements that Israel is claiming now are tunnels in the Shifa hospital, when Israel was in charge of Gaza Strip. So in my opinion, the newsrooms have to revise their approach and be more objective, not just repeat what Israeli narrative is telling them.
You've seen the images released by the Israeli Defense Force of the tunnels underneath the hospital with some armory. What do you think is going on there?
Fabrication. It's also fabrications. New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, all reported, and BBC reported that this information was unconvincing. That's exactly what they told. Because why did they take so many days to produce these results? Why didn't they show everybody the tunnels from the very first day when they occupied the hospital? The reality is that Israel is attacking all hospitals in the north of Gaza and the center of Gaza. They've already destroyed all the hospitals. They've already suspended the work of 26 hospitals out of 36 in Gaza because their real goal is ethnic cleansing of the people of the north of Gaza and Gaza City. Their goal is to ethnically cleanse this area completely through bombardment, through airstrikes, through artillery, to force people out and then occupy this area and not allow Palestinians to come back to it. This is another act of atrocity against a whole civilian population, pushing 2.3 million people to be clustered in an area that does not exceed 70 square miles in the south of Gaza. And that is very dangerous. But it also reflects what Netanyahu himself declared, and his government, and the spokesperson of his army. They are dreaming about the possibility of ethnic cleansing of all of Gaza Strip into Egypt.
I'm so sorry, because we got to you a little bit late. We're going to have to leave it there. We're about to go off air. But please come back and talk to us again. I want to explore that with you.
Yeah, anytime. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Now the weather? Yeah, the weather, adverts. Adverts are more important. I mean, I don't know, it is really interesting, isn't it? Because the problem is we believe things.
Motivating factor.
We know that Michael Clark, the analyst for Sky, made that claim that the tunnels were built when Israel was in charge of Gaza. Now he's making that claim as well. Obviously, anyone who's in occupied, we know that the first casualty of war is truth. We know that in previous things, and even criminals per se, when they want to stage something like false flag or whatever, you just put something there and say, oh look, here's proof. Unless there's like independent, then who's independent? Because if you bring your friends along, say like Israel bring America along, well, it's not very independent, is it? I mean, if they brought someone who's maybe from China, from someone that's not friendly with them, and they actually also... but this is the problem, isn't it? How do we know the truth? Because we're not there, we can't see anything, but we believe, we're told these things, they're fact. I mean, I know Sky do often say that not all of this can be verified, but it's before we were thinking, well, we can't trust Hamas, especially with the numbers, but now it seems like listening to this Palestinian, it's like, well, can we trust Israel either? Because they're both involved in a war, and they both want to win this war, and they both want to, justify it. Because we all know the problem is war is murder of humanity, isn't it? But you have to have a cause to make it justified. And if you don't have that, then you're seen as the bad person. So it's very important to control that narrative. And there, of course, that's where the crux of the matter is that controlling that narrative, then does the truth get in the way sometimes, because you don't want the truth to come out, because that would show that you are doing certain things, this, that and the other. It's very complicated, isn't it? If you just turn on the TV and just follow one narrative, it's easy just to follow until other narratives, and this is why I'm hating these things, when you hear these different people saying different things, it's easy for us to say, oh, well, he's Palestinian, he's part, can we believe him because he's an Arab, because he's part of, I'm not saying I'm saying this, I'm saying that the people will use these arguments that have been used, same as like this, say, is he part of Hamas, they're terrorists, blah, 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 can we believe what they're saying, is he vested interest? The thing is, at the end of the day, all human beings can lie, we know that. So how do we know when a human being is lying and when he's not? Even evidence isn't always evidence. We all know that, people can plant evidence, and evidence can be misrepresented or not even, get the actual true facts. We've seen this in criminal cases, let alone in wars. So how do we actually know the truth? It's very difficult, isn't it? It's very difficult to know who to believe, how to discern truth. Anyway, here's the next one.
To the Middle East now, where after delays and setbacks, it seems, for the moment at least, that a deal between Israel and Hamas will come into effect tomorrow. They're talking about a 4-day ceasefire and the gradual release of 50 hostages held by Hamas in return for 150 Palestinian prisoners being given their freedom. The Qatari Foreign Ministry, who have been leading the negotiations between the two sides, gave details this afternoon of what's likely to happen tomorrow.
The beginning of the pause will be 7 a.m. Friday, the 24th of November, and it will last, of course, as agreed, for 4 days. And the first batch of civilians to be released from Gaza will be around 4 p.m. of the same day. They will be 13 in number, all women and children, and those hostages who are from the same families will be put together within the same patch. Obviously, every day will include a number of civilians, as agreed, to total 50 within the 4 days.
Well, our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, says hurdles which had stalled the deal appear now to have been overcome.
Things are now going to plan. According to the Qataris, it was a kind of 24-hour delay. The last minute sort of there were differences, I think, over the exchange mechanism, but we do look like as though this biggest diplomatic breakthrough that we've had since the war began is now going to plan. So unless there's a last-minute hitch overnight, the plan is we will have this ceasefire tomorrow, and then at 4 p.m. Israeli hostages will be released by Hamas, 13 of them. They will be identified and checked for their condition, and then they will be sent to hospitals before they can be reunited with their families. And at some point after that, Palestinians will be released from Israeli jails. Now, there's a lot less that we've been told about that by the Qataris, the mediators. Surprisingly, they have very little information about what's going to happen to their Arab brothers and sisters. We don't know how many are going to be released. There are reports it'll be a ratio of sort of 3 to 1. So that could mean 39 Palestinians being released, and we're being told it's women and children. It seems to be largely women and male teenagers, but exactly when they're going to be released and how is not being made clear. I think the jeopardy in this deal, Mark, is the fact that it's kind of a day-by-day process. So each day, a list of names will be released of Israeli hostages that Hamas is going to let out. Whether that's 13 again the next day isn't really clear. And then they will be taken to the border and then checked as well, and then more Palestinian prisoners will be released. So at each stage there's a possibility of a hitch, of a disagreement, and it's not really clear who's overseeing this. And of course there's the danger, of course, of a breach in the ceasefire, and the Qataris slightly unclear as to who's going to oversee that. They're saying that lines of communication will be kept open, so if one side thinks the other side is fired, they'll have the opportunity to go to the Qataris and say, we think they fired a tank shell or something, was that intentional or not? So it's fraught with peril and jeopardy. I think the best thing we can say for at the moment is that it is at the moment going to plan, and unless there's a last minute hitch, we will see some of the Israeli hostages, 13 we're told, coming out by tea time tomorrow.
Well, the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, is on his first visit to the region since taking office. The former Prime Minister was joined by Israel's Foreign Minister on a visit to Kibbutz Be'eri to see the aftermath of Hamas's deadly attack. He went on to meet the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and expressed hope that British hostages would be released soon.
I hope everyone who's responsible behind this agreement can make it happen to bring relief to those families, including, of course, there are British nationals who've been taken hostage.
Then we're committed to getting everyone out, but we'll continue with our war aims, namely to eradicate Hamas, because Hamas has already promised that they will do this again and again and again.
And by the way, coming up at 6:30, I'll be speaking to David Cameron's former national...
Okay, that's enough of that. There wasn't really much in that one. Let's go to the next one.
I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, and I'm active, and she's active all the time in order to bring her son and his wife back home. On that Saturday morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, and there were the red signal alarm in Kibbutz Nirim, as well as in 22 other kibbutzes and cities in the south of Israel. All my family went into their shelter, their safe room, and then we text them. I'm living in the center of Israel, and we text them if everything is okay, and they said yes, it's okay. But after 20 minutes or even 10 minutes, they wrote us back. It's not the same. There is something very, very bad going on inside the kibbutz. We hear light gunshot, not the missile, the regular missiles that they used to have 20 years now from Gaza. And then we start texting, and all the time they said, yes, there are terrorists around the house. The parents, the grandmother, and also Yagev and Rimon said that. They even posted it on the Facebook. And then these messages continue and continue, but the last one was 8:30 in the morning when Rimon sent a voice memo to her mom saying they are here, meaning the terrorists from the Hamas, from ISIS, are here next to our house. They are shooting at us. I'm afraid. I'm sorry that I can't protect you, her mom living in the next kibbutz, Magen, and saying in the end, I love you. And that was the last time we heard from Yagev and Rimon. However, 8 or 9 hours later, when the army and the parents went, the army took over of the kibbutz, and the parents and the army went to see, and the IDF went to see the flat of Yagev and Rimon. They saw that there was a shooting sign on the floor, not on the wall, and there were signs of struggle, and the windows are broken, but there were no sign of them murdered. And this and the sign that they shot on the floor said that they wanted to scare them, but not to kill them. So it meant for us, we assumed then that they were kidnapped, but they are alive. And about 3 weeks ago, we had the sign that approved our assumptions, while Rimon were on the movie, the last video that the Hamas, or I don't know if it's the last, but the second video that the Hamas released were 3 women. I'm very happy for her that released yesterday. There was one woman on the middle, and Rimon was on the left side. And for us, it approved. The only thing I can say about that that video, is that Rimon and Yagev were kidnapped alive, and they are alive, and we are urging all over the world. We are traveling, we are taking interviews, we are meeting important people and influential and artists and businessmen and whoever can help us to bring them back home. I just want to add another thing, and it's been 50 days since they were kidnapped. And in that 50 days, all the families are traveling, talking, interviewing, whatever it needs to do. And in any interview we are taking, wherever we are in the world, we are asking everybody to make some influence and pressure on the Red Cross or other international organizations to enter inside and to force the Hamas, Iran, Qatar, I don't know, all those who are in discussion with the the terrorists, to let them see if they're okay, if they are getting at least basic condition, if they are getting their medication, if they are, alive. And I feel really, really bad, sometimes even angry, about all these powerful people, women and men, international organizations, governments around the world, that with all this power are not succeeding to bring the Red Cross or other international organizations to see our beloved one that have no rights whatsoever. Nobody knows anything about them. So imagine, each person can imagine, what if it was your son, your wife, your girlfriend, your friend, your, mother, doesn't matter, father. It can't continue being like that. So for me, there is nothing to say about political issue, if the war is good or not, if you love Israel or you don't. The only issue is to be human. Exactly. And the issue of hostages, it's an issue of humanitarian aid and not political. So wherever in the world they are talking about giving humanitarian aid to citizens or to people in Gaza, how come they are not talking about giving humanitarian aid to our hostages? How come? I have friends all over the world. And I'm asking them, how come you are not protesting against your government in order to bring somebody to see that they have the basic human rights?
That should have been one of the points Israel brought
and
up.
I'm not saying other citizens of the world don't have to get the human rights, but it's not okay and it's not fine to talk about other people humanitarian human rights and not about our beloved one. They are human beings. It's not about Jewish. It's not about Israel. It's not about Philippines or Nepalian or Thai. It's about human beings. And I also, just to finalize, I wish to thank you really for letting us this platform today and every day in the last 50 days. It's really, really important to us. When I'm angry, I'm not angry at you. I'm angry, I'm frustrating at how the world behaves. But thank you a lot for giving us this opportunity. And I'm thanking all the governments that do help us, and to bring them back home. And I urge you and I urge the people in your countries to be active, to demand the Red Cross to go in. Tobies or business or whatever, to make pressure on the government in order to release the hostages, all of them. Because what happened here, this is not human. This is nothing to do with religion. You can be Muslim, you can be Christian, you can be Jewish, you can be whatever you like. But in the end, of the basic thing about with everybody in any religion in the world is to be human. And what happened on that Saturday is nothing to do with humanity. Please help us. Please be active. Please call for action in your country. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Yeah.
It looks like this was some kind of broadcast of people going through this. Which is right, isn't it? Isn't it? Well, it should have been. Yeah, International Red Cross should be there to check on on the prisoners. Maybe I guess they would. I don't know. I guess they'd want to go there, even if it is dangerous. But I guess neither of the sides want to agree upon that. Otherwise, it would have been part of the truce, wouldn't it? You would have thought. Here's the next one.
Now, the Israeli government has said that it's open to the current 4-day ceasefire in its war against Hamas being extended if more hostages are released. Today is the last day of an agreed 4-day pause in military action to allow hostages to be released from Gaza. An Israeli government spokesman has warned that Israel's campaign to destroy Hamas would resume immediately if there was no extension to the ceasefire.
The campaign to end Hamas and bring our hostages home will resume immediately with the end of the hostage release pause. I'm not going to speculate, obviously, about the exact operational movements of our troops and the continuation of that strategy, but Hamas is on notice. That option for an extension is open. We want to receive another additional 50 hostages beyond tonight on our way to bringing everyone home. And as soon as that framework expires, Israel will continue with full force towards those 3 objectives: eliminating Hamas, making sure the Gaza Strip can never be a security threat to Israel, and releasing all the hostages. It is, of course, Israel's military pressure that has brought Hamas to bear to agree to release those hostages. We've had it begging for a breather because it's been clobbered over the last month, and that pressure will continue until we get everyone home.
Of 58 hostages have been released by Hamas from Gaza, including 40 Israeli women and children, with 17 Thai and 1 Filipino hostage also released. In exchange, 117 Palestinian prisoners have been freed by Israel. Israel says it would extend the ceasefire for an extra day for every 10 additional hostages that are released, while Hamas says it wants serious efforts from Israel to increase the number of Palestinians who are released. Well, our International Affairs editor Dominic Waghorn is in Jerusalem. And Dominic, we've seen these fantastic scenes of families being reunited from those who were taken hostage. But for the families still waiting, a really tense time, Israel is obviously keen to get as many more hostages as it can out of Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, every day those families are waiting to see if their relatives are on the list, and most of them are being disappointed because only 13 or so are getting out each day. We understand that 10 are on the list today. That will bring the number up to 50, and Israeli media are saying there is a difference of opinion, and the Israelis are not happy with the fact that on this list there are only children and elderly women, and therefore mothers are not on the list. And under the terms of the truce, families cannot be separated, and they've complained about that in previous days, and they are having a problem with it today. So whether that delays this or not is not entirely clear. For now, the ceasefire is holding, and I guess the Israelis will receive whoever Hamas sends over. The question now is, can it be extended? And both the Israelis and Hamas are saying yes, they'd like it to be extended. Hamas has always said they reckon they have 50 women and children in their captivity, but the Qatari negotiators say there are another 40 women and children being held by other groups around Gaza, because on the day, on October the 7th, Hamas burst through the fence in at least 29 places, and I think probably expected the Israelis to close those breaches fairly quickly, but they didn't. They remained open because the Israeli military and intelligence were so ill prepared for what happened that day. And then through those breaches, a number of different groups, not Hamas, but also smuggler gangs, the Qataris told us, criminal gangs and other organisations and individuals got out, probably on a freelance basis, and captured Israelis, taking them back into Gaza, presumably regarding them as a kind of commodity that they could then trade with Hamas for different gains. So they've had over 50 days to try and get those hostages back in a position where they could then trade them with the Israelis. The Qataris have said this truce period was to give them more time to do so. So this is now, the reckoning comes now as to whether Hamas can actually prove it's got these hostages that it can send over to Israel in return for more days ceasefire. Because what Hamas wants is to delay this indefinitely if possible, so they can recover from the pummeling they've had at the hands of the Israeli military and then recover to fight another day. The Israelis want the opposite. They want to have their women and children out. But after that, they made it very clear, and as that clip was making clear, they want to go in very hard against Hamas because their objectives are the destruction of the tunnels, the recovery of as many hostages as possible, but also the obliteration of Hamas. Experts differ as to whether that's actually possible, but that's certainly their objective, which means they are going to go after Hamas once this truce, however long it lasts, is over.
Meanwhile, Dominic, as we're talking to you, we're looking at these images of the Rafah border crossing, aid still going across there. This pause in the fighting, obviously good news for Palestinians who have been sort of ushered down to the south of the Gaza Strip. The conditions for them are really bleak, aren't they?
Yeah, so the aid is going in, and it's the aid they have desperately needed for more than 50 days now. So for the last, now we're on to a 4th day of aid pouring into Gaza. That's fuel, that's food, that's medical supplies. We heard from Dr. Abu Sittar giving a press conference in London earlier, saying that he had to give up performing surgery because of the lack of medical supplies, having had to carry out a number of operations without anaesthetic. So painted a very bleak picture of the medical situation inside Gaza. For the first time 2 days ago, cooking gas got into Gaza. So all of that is vitally needed by people in Gaza, and obviously they will be praying that this ceasefire can extend for as long as possible, because what they then face after the truce is the threat of a doubling down by the Israeli military, which must be terrifying. And as you say, they have gone in hard into northern Gaza, the Israelis, and they've urged Palestinian civilians to move south to the areas around Khan Yunis, and they're now saying that's where they're going to go next, because that's where they believe Hamas is based, where their commanders are, and where they may be holding more hostages. The problem with that, of course, is that you have the numbers of Palestinians there already and another million added to them, which makes you wonder as to what kind of humanitarian situation, what kind of disaster awaits the people of Gaza when Israel goes in hard in a military sense once this truce is over.
Okay, Dominic, thanks very much. Well, earlier today we heard from a British doctor who was based in Gaza at the Al-Shifa hospital, which is the largest in the Strip. Professor Hassan Abu Sita, a reconstructive surgeon who's from London, travelled to treat patients at hospitals in Gaza. He described the chaos as doctors and nurses searched the faces of incoming patients in fear of finding their relatives and loved ones. The surgeon also said that around 40 to 45% of those injured in Al-Shifa hospital were children.
Really, by day 4, day 5, half of my operating list, which was around 10 to 12 cases every day, starting at 8 or 9 in the morning and finishing at 1 in the morning, were children. My estimate is that there are now between 700 and 900 children with amputations of limbs, in some of whom multiple limbs have been amputated. On one night at Al Ali Hospital, I performed amputations on 6 children.
Well, let's bring in our security and defence analyst, Professor Michael Clark, who joins me in the studio. And Michael, one of the other things that the professor talked about was some of the injuries being from what he believed to be white phosphorus. This is something that Israel has denied using against civilians in this area. What's your take on this row?
Yeah, Jane, I mean, white phosphorus is used on the battlefield. It's a legal weapon to use on the battlefield. It's an illuminant, or it can make smoke, which is what the Israelis say it was used for. It can be smoke grenades, shells, and so on. The point about white phosphorus is it contains this sort of gel, which is very, very toxic. It burns tremendously, and it burns straight through the skin to the bone. It burns as long as there's any oxygen for it to keep on burning. So people who see white phosphorus injuries normally know them from any other sort of injuries. And when doctors see it, if they've got experience of white phosphorus, they're not normally wrong. The point about it is legal to use it on a battlefield, but not in an area where civilians may be. And it's absolutely forbidden to use it at ground level in its form as an illuminant, because it is such a deadly weapon, and it certainly shouldn't be used as an anti-personnel weapon.
What then do you rate the chances of the ceasefire? We've been talking about it being extended today, up to day 4. It sounds hopeful that it could be extended. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, both sides are, as it were, establishing their conditions for a further ceasefire. They're coming up with details of things that they want changed and so on. But they all want it. The Israelis, clearly want an extension to the ceasefire to get more hostages out. Hamas want an extension to the ceasefire, mainly to forestall Israel's second phase offensive against them in Gaza. And of course, the United States says it wants it for good humanitarian reasons and to get more aid in. All the UN agencies are saying we must have an extension. So there's a lot of pressure to keep this ceasefire going for maybe several days, maybe quite a few more days after that. And from Netanyahu's point of view, it may give him the chance to get up to 100 of the 230 odd hostages out, perhaps even more. But his problem is he's kind of holding on to a situation which is extremely unstable inside the Israeli cabinet. I mean, there are 3 cabinets. There's a war cabinet, a security cabinet, and a general cabinet. And he has 2 opposition figures in the cabinet, Benny Gantz and Gazi Eisenkot, who were brought in specifically on the understanding that there will be a plan for what happens next, and no plan has appeared. And meanwhile, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's on the extreme right, the nationalist right, talks about being able to take over the whole of the West Bank. He doesn't believe in any ceasefires or any aid whatsoever to Gaza. He just wants to actually kill Hamas and develop his own sort of ultra-right-wing agenda. And so as between these sorts of pressures, nothing is coming out of the Israeli government, just nothing from a political point of view. And so the only thing that is coming out is, we will defeat Hamas. But to be honest, it's not even clear that they can do that at this stage.
Okay, Michael, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks very much. Let's take you back to the breaking news story that we have today. The Health Secretary.
So that was the last one. They didn't have much of the doctor, but at least he's still alive, because we've heard a lot from him throughout, and then it seemed that period where we didn't hear about him at all. I guess that's when he was moved to Egypt. It must be very difficult being a doctor in a war zone, especially when, you know, it's non-combatants, children and amputees. These, you know, I mean, I was just thinking they're like the lucky ones, because there were children that, you know, thousands of children that have died because they've been too close to the combatants. But the ones now that have got multiple limbs missing, how their lives are going to be now. Because we as human beings have devised bombs and weapons to kill each other, and we've taught ourselves that if we can justify that by saying, well, we're doing this because we're defending this, or we're going to do this, that and the other. And yeah, I know in the system that we live in there are these justifications, but looking at it from a outside perspective, from a godlike perspective, from an alien perspective, that we can word spell our way out of being human. You know, that we could find a justification for killing one another, ending the one existence. We all only get one existence, unless you believe in reincarnation. But if there isn't such a thing, and we only do get one existence, imagine that one existence is ended when you're 3 years old, a 9-month baby. And I'm not just saying to do a war. This can be applied exactly, copy and paste, to terrorism, to those Hamas terrorists that ended lives of children and women, not the ones they kidnapped, the ones that they killed in the kibbutz on the massacre of October 7th, 1,400 people. I think it's 30 children out of that 1,400. And it doesn't matter the scale or the numbers. It doesn't really matter. Every life is every life. One life is one too many. It's not like just because there's thousands of the Palestinians that somehow... No, it doesn't matter. One life is one life. It doesn't matter the amount. The very fact that anyone could kill a child by face-to-face, which is, I guess you would say, was worse. But even so, and nevertheless, dropping a bomb, you still killed that child. You've devised a way so that you don't have to do it up close. How evil are humans, really? That they can, and we, you know, people. If you look into in a book, you probably find that, you know, people are credited with, oh, this person invented the gun, this person invented the bomb. This, as if it's some kind of something that we should be celebrated. It's something terrible. It's terrible that we have found ourselves growing and evolving into a place where we have to cut up bits of land, that we can't share everything that we freely found with each other. We can't share it with each other. There's been people in our past that have cut bits of land and said, this is mine, put a flag in it and said, this is mine, and I'm going to fight to the death, and all you people are going to follow me, and you're going to be like me, and you're going to fight for that bit of land that we all had freely at the beginning, and you're going to lose all the other bits of land because you're going to defend only this one part. How stupid we are. How really stupid. Think about this. You've given up all of the land for one bit of land. That's what patriotism is. That's what being a country person is. To say, this is yours, this is your bit, which you're governed over anyway, so it's not yours anyway, because you're not free, because everything that has to be done, you know, your whole life is about earning money and keeping the taxes and keeping the system alive. That's your whole existence. Your whole existence isn't the free existence that people before all this had, where they could just enjoy life like animals do. Well, animals that are free, that we don't kill and eat or do things to. Imagine it. Someone came, put a flag and said, this is mine, this is yours. We're not humane enough to share it all. and then we're going to fight over it, and then we're going to make justifications for fighting over it so that we can morally feel okay about killing people, and then we're going to make a term collateral damage when we accidentally kill someone we don't mean to kill, because we never mean. They always say this. We're very targeted, we're very specific, we don't mean to kill innocent people, we don't want to kill innocent people, but it does happen, because that's the problem with war. And if you know that, then why are you still doing it? Because then you, by implication, you are doing it. But we've made a term, so it makes it okay, so that everyone sitting at home, they can hear that term, and then like conspiracy theory, once you hear certain words, it triggers a response to you that you can say, well, okay, this is collateral damage. Oh, okay, it was okay that those children died. They didn't mean to do it, so it's okay morally. Because this is part of war. You've accepted that there's such a thing as war. You've accepted that there's such a thing as weapons and that are okay to have. That there are people in America and other countries where it's your right to have a weapon by your side. It's your right to go around shooting people if you're in defence of yourself, or to have sports. We've convinced ourselves that it's okay for us to eat our fellow animals. And that's okay. It's not okay to eat human beings, but it's okay to eat other animals, certain animals, not all animals, depending where you live. Because if you eat cats and dogs in certain countries, that would be terrible. But if you eat cats and dogs in other countries, well, that's perfectly fine. How stupid we are. We've all convinced ourselves of all of these things. It's not just one thing, it's loads of stuff that we don't even think about. We've accepted, because we were babies. And all this stuff has been put into our heads through our teachers, through our education, through media, through lots of different outlets that have gone in to build us as we are. And we all go along living this comfortably numb life, and until one day someone says something and click, you start thinking about these things. For me, it was like 9/11 and the flat earth that made me start to questioning things. It doesn't matter whether those things are, anything to do with that. But it starts to make you question, then you start to realise, wait a minute, what else have we accepted that we didn't think that we accepted, that we have done all this time? And I know this is a bit off from the Hamas-Gaza thing, but it's not really, because it's an example, it's a proof, it's showing us that, wait a minute, we know this is so wrong, we can feel it so wrong. Whether you want to talk about what the terrorists did on October the 7th and the massacre, when Israelis, Jews have suffered so much throughout history, through the Holocaust, through Hitler, through the Nazis, and to have to live this again. But then also from the Gazans, from the Palestinians having to live under oppression, having to live under these bombs with thousands upon thousands of them dying in a war that's nothing to do with them, it's to do with this terrorist group and the government of Israel. And these are examples, we know, we feel it. When we see and we hear these people die, and that's why there's protests. People don't go out in the cold and protest over everything. They go and protest where there's a reason. And we see this, and usually it's a human reason. We saw it with George Floyd. We saw it with Black Lives Matter. We saw it with this, the pro-Palestine marches. We've seen it with, lots of different things. When it comes to usually something where we feel there's some injustice or something wrong, there's not usually very many protests, especially week after week, where it's something that doesn't actually have some kind of merit or some kind of human aspect to it. So that's telling us that there is something wrong here. And it's not this, we're looking at it the wrong way. We're looking at a band-aid approach, what Subtle Infinity would call, is it the macro and the micro, whichever way, I can never remember which is big and which is small. Is it micro or small? We're looking at the micro, whereas we should be looking at the macro, or in my words, the old ways and new ways. We're looking at it, this is the war, but it's so much more than that. It's the convincing that we've done to ourselves that it's okay to kill other human beings. It's the convincing that we've done it's okay to us to make all these weapons, jet planes. We've put all this intelligence and energy and money into making the military, the weapons, the tanks, the warships, the soldiers, the infrared, the drones that can fly around and drop bombs or take pictures of all that, the satellites, all this stuff to kill one another. And it doesn't matter what justification you put against it, because that's just to give you some kind of morality that it's okay for us to kill one set of human beings. We should never get to this stage, and if we're getting to this stage, we should be seeing why are we getting to this stage. Why are we getting to a stage where we can find a justification for killing one set of another? Because someone else did something bad. Why did they do something else bad? What is the crux? What is the root of all of this? The root of all of this is land. Land that is freely all of ours. Never could we own it. That was the problem. The idea that some greedy bastards in the past came up with the idea that this is mine and this is yours. That greed is what has led to all of this. It isn't. It's all of ours or none of ours, whichever way you want to look at it. And we should all, as human beings, in our one existence, our beautiful one existence of life, be able to live with each other in harmonious times, in thinking that, yes, this is your one existence, why can't we live it in a better way, rather than this greedy way? And the land was the beginning, the cutting of it up, the segregating each other from each other, then putting boxes and labels on each other, you're this, you're that, based on where you are, your location, or your skin colour, all those kinds of things. And then money was the other one, putting money into it. So that now you have to do this. You can't do things freely. You were given your life. You were given energy to do everything. You were given all the resources that you would ever need to do all the things that we've done. And we could do it all freely. But no, let's put money on it. Let's take a bit of paper, a bit of gold, the actual materials that are freely given, and put value on them and say, well, you have to do this. And so that creates the divide between poor and rich countries, poor and rich people. And that creates the problem that we can only do things for each other if we have a certain amount of money, and we all have to suffer because we don't have a certain amount of money. How stupid is that, when all our lives, all the energy, everything else, all of it is freely given to all of us? And there's no need to this. These are man-made shackles that we've created for ourselves, that we keep living, and it's another one of these things that we've accepted without even knowing we've accepted it. I think this last few bits that I've recorded on this are the most important I've ever said on the pursuit of truth. Please, if you believe in it, if you think that this is right what I'm saying and you want it to change, we need it to change in a non-violent way. I don't know how we can get it to change, because it's over thousands of years and lots of things. There's a massive amount of things that we've taken in and believed and followed without thinking about all of this. And how do we unpick it? How do we put Pandora back in her box, as it was, or the genie back in its lamp? How do we do all that? How do we put ourselves in a better situation? How do we get those people who want to keep it like this not? How do we all, in a peaceful way, have an existence where at one day there will be a time when each one of us will wake up and see that we only have one existence, and we can live with each other, and we don't need to have money to do things. We don't need to have possessing the bits of land or documents or this, that and the other. We can all freely move about on this place that we found ourselves upon, with all these resources freely given and all this energy of existence that we've been given, to be able to do all the things, to make a world for everyone equal, where everyone has the infrastructure, where everyone has the technology, the medicines, where we have the breakthroughs and all of this, because we're all working as one, which is what we are. It is intrinsically true. We are all one. We are all one species, the human race. And the minute you divide that is the minute that you lose out. So we need to recognize that and rebuild it as one again, and see ourselves as one, and remap everything that we've lived in and will continue, and our future of living in those eyes. Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.